So you guys have been asking for this for a while, so we're going to go through an in-depth installation for all of you guys so you understand exactly what's involved with installing a Wildfire car lift. We have an awesome product, a really easy installation. The lift is heavy, but it's definitely something that you and a buddy can easily do in a day. So we're going to walk through the process step by step. We're going to speed up through some of the portions that aren't quite as important, but we're going to zoom in, slow down, and walk through each and every aspect. So before you even get your Wildfire lift, you know exactly what's involved with the installation process. Let's get into it. Step one, let's go through, let's cut the packaging off, let's pull everything out. We just pulled the crossbeams out. One thing I want to point out for you when you're doing the installation, you're going to get to this point. Do not try to pull your drip trays out at this point. You're going to bend them or crack them. They are strategically put in place. You need to remove the 4 posts before you get to pulling that out or you will damage them. So here's our parts box. The first thing you're going to notice, you get a colored assembly guide. I'll open that up for you real quick. You're going to see we have step-by-step photos with documentation. This was written by us after a lot of installations, so we know what we're doing. Follow the guide. You're also going to find all of your particular parts and pieces that will be called out in the assembly guide in this bag. We've got our 4 caster pins for the included caster set. That's in the box as well. We're going to then have our nylon stops. These are the guides that go on top of the crossbeam to keep the nylon shims in place. Speaking of nylon shims, we're going to have that in the box as well. So we've got these all in here. We also then have our locks. This is for our rolling jack tray. That'll be in the box as well. The plungers that attach to said lock. We're then going to have pieces here that are meant for our actual cross beam cable keepers. So those are going to be in here. The cotter pins, this is going to be for the caster pins. And then lastly, this is an important piece, and I need you to put it on the install. It is in the guide. This piece right here is the hose clamp. It makes sure that you attach the hose to the crossbeam so when you're lowering it, you don't pinch it under the actual crossbeam itself. So that's going to be the contents in the parts box. Make sure that's there in the assembly guide. It'll actually list those pieces out for you so you can ensure you have everything. Quick piece to point out for you, the motor itself. So depending on how it's packaged and put in here, you have one end that's heavier. That's your motor head. The other end is your hydraulic plastic reservoir. It has effectively no weight to it. Be careful when you lift it out. You don't want to lean it on that side or have it tip over and cause some sort of an issue to the capacitor cover itself. As you can see, when I lift this up, this side's very light. So light, but this side's significantly heavier. So you want to be careful when you put this down. You put it down safely. You don't want to put this end up. If you put this end up like so, and you tip it over, you're going to create an issue to the capacitor covers. One thing you'll notice, we're just unpackaging our crossbeam. You may see some of this if you get in here real quick and take a look. It's going to be actually bead blast material. This is what we use before we go through the powder coating process. It cleans the metal, gets rid of any surface rust. Inevitably, inside of the crossbeam itself, there's going to be holes where some of that material gets in, and through shipment and processing, some of that shakes out. It's very difficult to get all of it out. That is nothing to be concerned with, nothing to worry about. Simply package it up, clean up the floor, and go on with your way. So we just went ahead, pulled out the cross beams and the posts. One question we do get quite often, so I'm going to showcase this to you guys, is why is there an unfinished piece of steel support bracketry in here? Well, that piece that was in here, as you notice, the end of the posts themselves sat right in here. This is as an additional piece of support so it doesn't put undue stress on your runways or create any sort of issues. This is going to be scrap material. It is not used in the installation. You saw us pull the post and the cross beams out of the packaging. You also saw some B-roll so you could see what they looked like as they were pulled outside of the packaging. When you're pulling everything apart, I want you to take note of the orientation here. It's the easiest to set it up in this orientation. It'll also be shown in the step-by-step color photo assembly guide we have in the first portion. But note, on the posts themselves, you're going to have the lock notches facing up and towards the middle. That'll be the case for all 4 of these. Up and towards the middle, that's the correct orientation for the posts. If you notice on the cross beams themselves, the way we have these orientated, the linkage rod is on the outside of each. As you can see, it's pointing away. That is the correct orientation for the cross beam to line up with the post when we go and assemble it that way. Another important thing, this is called out in our assembly guide with big yellow stars to make sure it's a critical aspect of the assembly. As you can see, I have a long linkage rod. I also have a short linkage rod. The side that you're going to put your power unit on will be the side of the short linkage rod, as your handle for the lock releases to control all 4 locks at one time with one handle will be on that particular side. So you want to keep that in mind so that they are on the same side. These are mirrored images cross beams, so you can go and switch these linkage pieces from side to side if need be, but it's a lot easier to do it correct up front. Low-level tip, when you get ready to slide the crossbeam onto the post itself, it's a really easy process, but this will make it a little easier for you. You've got your spring-loaded main lock. You've got to keep it open to slide down. Take one of your nylon sliders, slide it right into this corner here. That's going to keep that lock open so you can easily slide it down. You still have to contend with your secondary lock, but as you'll see here, when you slide that on, you're going to lift it up. You're going to just keep this held open with your finger. You can then slide it down to the position you need before you stand the post and crossbeams upright. Our next step is going to be sliding our nylon stoppers in place. Before we do so, we want to make sure that our main locks are all on the lock notch and not stuck on the secondary. As you can see, this has no space. It's sitting right there on the post. In the secondary, I can open and close freely. If you're stuck on the secondary, clearly you won't be able to move so, and you'll see a gap above the lock notch. We're going to then take our nylon sliders, we're going to then slide them into place. One thing to notice here, on this particular piece, there's a notch cut out. There's 2 in this orientation and 2 in the opposite. That's so you can slide it in on this piece where the lock is without contacting the lock. So we're going to slide that into place, put that down, going to go all the way around, put all 4 of these in place. I'm going to go ahead and cut the bottom plastic wrap off to show you what is actually inside that bottom, because there are some important pieces. So before you start thinking that you might be missing something, make sure you are opening the bottom to look for all the pieces involved. So as you can see, now that I've unpackaged everything, the important pieces under here that I want you to take note of, we've got our front and rear lock latches. Those are important pieces. We've got our hose. We have our jack tray. We then have the approach ramp attaching brackets. These are critical. And then you also have your tire stops. So these are all packaged underneath to optimize the space. You saw how we packaged everything. This is where they fit, so they are in the lift. Just make sure you double check the bottom. So one thing that sets us apart from the majority of the industry is how we pre-assemble our hydraulic piston, cables, and hoses. Come underneath here and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So when you open up the top packaging, the top runway, you're gonna notice that all of these cables are actually pre-run. The pulleys are in position, the capers are in place, and the cables are pre-run. They're actually zip tied together, so once you put this runway in place, all you need to do is cut these zip ties and then route the cable to the correct position. It saves you a significant amount of time and it just makes the overall process much easier. So we've gotten to the point where all these pieces are handled by hand. Generally, 2 guys can put these pieces together. This lift is consisting of 8 large pieces. You got your 4 posts, your 2 crossbeams, and your 2 runways. As you've seen earlier in this video, we now have the 4 posts and crossbeams set up into these goal post patterns as you see behind. The runways themselves, those are gonna be too heavy for 2 guys to handle. Don't try it, it risks injury for sure. This is where we're gonna bring the engine hoist in with a strap. We're gonna show you how we go ahead, lift this up, set them onto the crossbeams and attach them in place. Now that the runways are in place, one thing to keep note of, we haven't run the cables, we haven't run the top caps yet. You're gonna wanna take and push your runways out all the way. There is a little bit of play between the bolt and the hole that it goes through. So we'll take them, and shove it out. As you notice, it maybe went out an 1/8 of an inch. The reason that's important, you want to do that on both ends. If you put the aluminum inserts in or the drip trays, it'll allow them to fit correctly. Moving on to what would be step 5 in the assembly guide, we now have the runways in position. We're now going to route our cables, but before we do so, they have to attach to something. That's what these top caps are. So I want to point out a couple important factors for you when you're assembling the lift. First piece, as you can see, we have the hole. That's going to be where the cable is going to route through and be attached with the bolts. That hole needs to be pointing towards the middle. It can't be to the outside. It has to be pointing towards the middle so the cable can attach. The other thing to note, we have a blank and we have one with our bolt holes pre-drilled into that. You will receive 2 of each. The one with the bolt holes, this is going to be what attaches the motor mount to hang your motor to operate the lift. You will receive 2. One will go on the driver's side front and the other will go on the passenger rear, or vice versa. We have given you 2 so you don't accidentally put one in the wrong spot and have to go switch them. You will get 1 of each for those 2 corners. The 2 blanks will go in the opposite 2 corners. Again, hole pointing towards the center. So a point to make when you're going to pull out your cables, we have to extend the hydraulic ram through the powder coating process, the hydraulic ram, to keep it protected long term. This back breather valve is actually going to have a cap put in place. So we're going to have a cap in there. So what we need to do is we need to make sure and then get in here and pull this cap out. So as you can see, pull that cap out. What that's going to allow the actual ram to do is go in and out, retract and extend in and out without holding pressure in there. So it'll allow for an easier operation. So now that we have the cable and the plug out of the back of the hydraulic ram, we're going to pull the cables out to extend them to get to the top cap. What you can do in this case, as you notice, there's not a whole lot of play in this cable. I don't have a whole lot of motion. I'm going to come to the end of this hydraulic ram, which is going to be right under here. I can then take and I can pull this hydraulic ram. That's going to extend that for me. What that's going to do is give me more slack in these cables, so I can now play with the cable. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take off the nuts and the washer. And in order to route this out correctly, I'm actually going to take this thread side out and I'm going to come in, I'm going to loop up and under, and I'm going to come out the top. So it can be possible to come out the top this way. I'm going to then go ahead and pull my cable. As you notice, pull the cable. It's going to route on the outside of the main big pulley and on the inside of the secondary pulley. I'll then hop up and attach it to the top cap. We'll then have the cable connected. I'm going to then go and do the other 3 to complete all 4 cables. I'm going to show you how to install the crossbeam cable keeper. It is not difficult, but there is a technique to look out for and makes it a lot easier. So one thing you'll notice, I'm going to start with the bolt. The nut is maybe 10 threads, 8 threads down. The reason I do so is I'm actually having to get in and get past this pulley right here, the backside. I can start to spin it to get it threaded in. As I do so and I get it started, I then need to keep this nut from spinning completely. While I do so, I can then tighten the outside. So I'm tightening the bolt itself. Keep in mind, I can only go so far, otherwise it'll come into contact with the pulley. So I get about here, I can then take this as my jam nut and tighten that in. I'd go ahead and grab a wrench to tighten it down completely, but now we're tight here, tight there. It's gonna keep that cable from going anywhere. Now that we have the cables run, the next step is going to be hooking up our linkage rod. This particular handle, we're going to run it through the runway. In the center of the runway, there's going to be a long black rod this will thread into. What that allows us to do is have one point of contact where we open all 4 locks, the 2 on this side and the 2 on that side connected by the linkage. I'll show you here quickly how we do that. We do need to take this bolt, or this nut, excuse me, off. There is going to be a spacer here. We'll take and slide that through. Once we slide that through, we're going to replace that bolt, the nut again right away. Thread it up about 1 inch or so. We're going to then slide this underneath, and then as we get under here, there's going to be that center black rod I was mentioning. We're going to then connect it into that center rod, and I'm tightening it into place right now. We'll then jump under here in just a moment, show you how to tighten the connections from the center linkage rod to the front and the rear, and then how to connect these front and rear linkage pieces to make it operate as one. So pro tip when doing the install of the linkage rod, I've tightened all the other bolts on the runways to make sure the lift's secure. I keep this one loose. The reason I do so at this particular point, I'm going to remove these pieces right here. I'm going to take and then actually push this bolt. If I can take it here, I'm going to push this bolt in.
Nice camera.
I'm going to push that in, and then I'm going to tighten this down. What that's going to allow me to do is getting this tightened all the way into the position that I need it tightened to, just to where the spacer is just going to be connecting right here, and then I can back this off. If you were to keep this nut in place that whole time, you're then going to run into contact and you won't be able to tighten that down. I'd then go ahead and connect the linkage rod pieces. We'll get these adjusted to connect correctly. We'll tighten these down so they're the right length, and then I'd go ahead and put the nut right back on the bolt. So I'm going to show you how to connect the front and rear linkage rod. As mentioned when we were putting the linkage rod in, there's a center black rod that can shift from side to side as it is positioned on the inside boxed in portion of the runway. So you'll want to position it so it does line up to the threaded end on either side. You're going to thread this in, and as we see right here, there is a jam nut. Now I will say this is a little bit more challenging because the space is tight, but if done correctly, it works 100% of the time. If you do not do this correctly and get that nut tight enough, you'll pull the lock, and on the side by the motor, your 2 lock arms will release, but the far side won't because it'll spin loose. So what we recommend is you're going to want to get a vice grip, and then this is a stubby 19 millimeter. We're going to get our 19 millimeter in on the nut. We'll get that vice grip in on here as such. Once it's tight in place, we're going to really wrench on it. I mean, really get this sucker tight, because we need that to function as one solid rod. By getting that jam nut tight, it'll function as one rod. We can remove the pieces. Then when you pull your lock handle on the far side, it will continue all the way through, open the front and the rear locks. Now that we have the cables run, our cable keeper on the crossbeam is in position, we've hooked up the linkage. We're going to go ahead and then assemble or put on our pulley covers. You will receive 4 of these. They will be individually wrapped in the assembly or in the packaging. As you'll notice, they are side specific with the notch cut out. It is one big piece we fold into this shape. One thing to note is I am sitting on my main lock. I can tell because I can open and close my secondary. If you are sitting on your secondary, you'll have to wait until you get hydraulics to operate up and down before you put this on. Otherwise, it will not fit if this does not move in and out. I'm going to slide this down and around the cable. I'm going to then slide it into position. There are 2 bolt holes on each side for a total of 4. We're going to bolt it on, and then this will be in position to keep the pulleys and yourself safe. So we're gonna go ahead after we've gotten to this stage of the assembly and hang the motor. We're almost to the point where the lift is operational. We just have to determine where we wanna hang that motor and power unit. Now the motor will be hung on this motor mount, which does attach to the top of the top cap and then hangs down. The most common orientation and location for the motor is gonna be hanging directly off this side. So the motor mount itself can actually hang from the top in this particular position. It can also be hung 90 degrees off to the side, and in the very rare instances, it can actually be hung directly off the backside as well. However, if you do in that orientation, as you'll notice, there's 4 bolt holes. You would only be able to hang 2 of them going that way. So we do not recommend, and I would say, frankly, discourage hanging it on that side. Also, if it's on that side, you still need to operate the release lever at the same time, so it becomes more challenging. If it does hang this direction, it does not make the lift any wider. However, if you do hang it off to the side, it adds roughly 12 inches to the overall width of the lift that you're hanging it on. So it's definitely something to take into consideration. So we'll go ahead and get the motor mount hung, hang the motor, hook up the hoses, and get the lift operational.